Dear sisters, today we see 7 disciples. Out of 12, today 7 of them were going back to their old profession. We see a deep despair, a great disappointment in spite of the resurrection of Jesus. And Jesus appeared. In the gospel today we read, this is the third time Jesus is appearing. All the 4 gospels narrate in different way. In the Gospel of John, which we heard today, the first manifestation, revelation of Jesus, resurrected Jesus to the apostles immediately on the Sunday itself. Jesus tells Mary Magdalene, she comes and reports to apostles. That very evening, Jesus appears. Then after that, St. John says, at that time Thomas was not there. Then after second time, Jesus appeared to the disciples according to the Gospel of John. When Thomas was there, he shows. And now the Gospel reading from chapter 21, we heard that Jesus is appearing third time. In spite of appearing twice to the disciples, and also it says that Jesus did many signs. Yesterday we heard that he asked, okay, give me something to eat. He took and he ate. And he said, touch my hands, all these things. In spite of all these things, Peter and other disciples were lost their hope and clarity, that mission God has entrusted to be witnesses. And he was going away, and along with him, another 6 also joined, altogether 7 of them in the boat. And we see they struggled whole night, but they didn't find anything. And Jesus comes and says, in this version today we read, Jesus says, have you caught anything, friends? Jesus calling them as friends. And Jesus also said, I will not call you as servant, but I call you as friend. But in some other translations we see, children, have you caught anything? God is addressing the apostles as children. Throughout the gospel, we never see them as Jesus calling them as children. He always says, I will not call you as servant, but as my friends. And maybe among the friends we'll have fights also. That's why Peter and Jesus always have this debate. Not only Peter, other disciples also Jesus used to scold. But here, Jesus was so compassionate. He calls them children. And friends, in that sense, you are my friends, but you are also my children. And with a lot of compassion, understanding, he comes to them, and he prepares food for them. And always, whenever we see God comes as our food. He nourishes. Every time we receive God in the Holy Eucharist, God nourishes our souls, our spiritual bodies. And Jesus prepares them breakfast. And this time, nobody asks anything. And after that, we see in the Gospel, in that last chapter, 21, in Gospel of John, where Jesus commissions Peter, feed my lamb, take care of my sheep, and so on. And John also writes, there are many other things Jesus did, but not everything is written in the Gospel. Things which are written, which we read in the Bible, it is for us to believe. It is to believe in the resurrected Jesus. As St. Paul says, Jesus is resurrected. If not, our faith has no value. And that's what in the first reading St. Peter boldly says. It is said in the 4th chapter, already 5,000 people were following Jesus. 2 chapters before, when he starts his sermon, first sermon, on the day of Pentecost, we see 3,000 people were baptized. And now it is becoming like viral, 5,000. And chief priests and elders, Sadducees, all people were troubled. What is happening, in whose name? And Peter is saying, you people rejected, but Jesus is risen from the dead. And in his name we are able to do miracles. God strengthened the Peter to be a rock, to strengthen the faith of his brothers. In our life too, whenever we go through time of despair, disappointment, God comes in different ways. Just like disciples were not able to recognize Jesus, though he is standing only 100 yards from the sea of Galilee. They are not able to recognize. But God comes in our life too, when maybe we may not able to recognize God. But God comes in different ways and He speaks lovingly and He addresses His children and friends. And He is there. That is what God's promise. I am with you always. Let us ask God's grace and thank God for His presence among us, especially in the form of Holy Eucharist. Jesus comes every day and meets us